there are a few things that I want to talk about with feeding, okay? You can do by weight, you can do by vision. I've showed you both in various videos that I've done in my sourdough playlist that I do. Sometimes, like, I have went through the steps of weighing it with you, and I have went through the steps of eyeballing it. I prefer eyeballing it, but if you get into the specifics of percentages and hydrations, you're going to have to weigh it. Point blank. If you're going to be that technical, you're going to have to weigh it, and you're going to have to learn your math. And don't ask me what it is, because I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I don't know what that math is. I think in one of my videos I put it up there, but I actually had to go Google it myself because I don't get that technical, and that's not how I'm going to teach it. But if I can at least get you started and you want to go learn about it, then so be it. That will be on you. So when you are feeding a starter, simple, basic rules. I'm going to break it down and make it a reality so you can understand it. Okay, so if you go into a restaurant and you look at a buffet, say there's one buffet. It's going to take you X amount of time to eat that whole buffet, okay? So let's say you have 50 grams of starter or about a quarter cup of starter, okay? So then you're going to do, let's just say a 1 to 1 to 1. That is a sourdough starter to flour to water ratio. Basically in that order. Sourdough starter is usually always first because that's your basics. That's your basis of what you're weighing or measuring from. 1 to 1 to 1 will be all equal, whether it's 50, 50, 50 grams, 1 cup, 1 cup, 1 cup. I don't care. It doesn't matter. That is your ratio. But when you get to specifics on percentages and hydration and measurements and all of that, just know that 1 part flour being in 1 cup and 1 part water being in 1 cup does not weigh the same. So that's where you start getting your percentages of hydration off. That's where you will start seeing, if you're in these Facebook groups, where some of these starters are watery, because 1 cup of flour will technically weigh less than 1 cup of water. So you're actually going to have more water than flour if you weigh it. That's why it's thin. Okay, back to the restaurant. Back to the restaurant thing. So you walk into a restaurant, you got 1 table of buffet, and you sit down at it. It's going to take you X amount of time, say 4 hours. Just say 4 hours you're going to eat everything on that buffet, okay? That would be, say, a 1 to 1 to 1, okay? If you walk into a restaurant and they have 4 tables, buffet, 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 4 buffets, you sit down and you have to eat through all of it. It's going to take you, let's say 4 times 4, not technical with the sourdough time frame. I'm just want you to get the visualization. 4 hours for 1 buffet, and say if there's 4 buffets, it'll take you 12 to 16 hours to eat through all of it. Now imagine that's going to be a starter being fed 1 to 4 to 4. Does that make sense? Okay. So with your one part or 1 ratio of your sourdough starter, say it's 50. Times 4 is going to be 200. Times 4 is going to be 200. Or 1 cup, 4 cup, 4 cup. Okay? Hope that makes sense. I just want you to visualize. So now, whenever you are feeding a higher ratio to your sourdough starter, like the 1 to 4 to 4, it will take longer for that sourdough starter to eat through all of that. That's my point I'm making. Because I see a lot of people in these groups, and a lot of people ask me, if they didn't get my starter, from me. I have friends that text me every now and then, just ask me questions, and they're like, "Oh my God, it didn't eat through it, or it didn't double in size in 4 to 6 hours like my recipe says." So my first question is, what's your ratio? What did you start with? What did you feed it? And the temperature in your home, because when it's warm, it's very active. When it's cool, it slows down. It gets sluggish. And usually they're like, well, I only had like, you know, just a tablespoon or so of starter, and I fed it like 2 cups because I wanted to make a whole bunch of starter for a whole bunch of recipes. Well, there's your problem. You put a skinny kid on a 4-table buffet. You got to give it time to eat through it, you know. So I want you to understand that's the feeding ratio and understanding what happens. If it is, let's think of it this way too. If your buffets are full of soups and stews, which would be your more watery ratios, takes less time to get through, and you're going to get hungrier faster because it's a lot more water. If you sit down in a buffet and it's all noodles, cakes, and pies, and all these carbs, that's going to be that thick, heavy starter, okay? And it's going to take it longer to eat through it because you gave it more substance than you did water. Okay, if that makes sense. It's going to last longer. I actually fed one so thick and stuck it in the refrigerator that it stayed having bubbles. It did not get hungry for a month. I don't know how in the world that happened because I feed it the same way every time. Like just eyeball dumping it, making it the same thickness because I don't weigh mine, and I said that before. I stuck it in the refrigerator. That thing bubbled up and it just stayed there and stayed there and stayed there. It stayed there for like a month before it ever got any hooch on it. So what is hooch? While we're there, what is hooch? So back to the watery starters. When you're first starting out and you make your own starter, you might have some water separation, which is where the water is not on top. It's going to be farther down, maybe in the middle or the bottom. That's water separation. Hooch is always going to be on top. Now, hooch is going to be, it's going to start out like just clear, watery, sweat looking stuff on top, and it's going to change and grow more and more because what it's doing is that flour is settling and it's pushing that water up because the yeast has eaten all the flour. So as the flour kind of shrinks down and falls to the bottom, the water comes up, and it is a form of water separation per se, but it's on top, not down in the bottom. Hooch is just a sign that it's hungry. It's done ran out. Your starter, your yeast is starting to lay in the bed. It's starting to go to sleep because it's hungry. It needs to be fed. It's kind of sluggish. You know how we run down. Your starter's running down. That's all it's doing. And the water is just being pushed to the top. Now, the longer that it sits there, it can sit on the counter for about 2 to 3 days before it starts getting hooch. The longer it sits there, the more you're going to see the water changing. It will change to a tan color. It'll change to a brown color. If it sits there long enough, it will turn black. And it may or may not smell like fingernail polish remover. I get a lot of comments saying, oh, I had a sourdough starter before, but I killed it, so I threw it away. My first question is, what made you think you killed it? And probably 75% of the people have told me that it turned black and smelled like death. And I'm like, it was just hungry. You didn't kill it until you threw it away. Then you killed it. But it was not dead until you threw it away. It was fine. So I'm sorry you killed your sourdough starter because you literally killed it. You threw it away and you said goodbye. And it was just hungry. You just needed to feed your baby. That's all. So if you have had that happen before, then that's the thing. Is that it was just hungry. And mine actually does have hooch on it right now. Let me get it. I will show you. And I do keep mine in the refrigerator right now. And I used this last week. So there is my hooch. It's just liquidy stuff on top. And like I said, this is only about a week old. So this is kind of still in the clear state. It's not quite turning brown yet. It's starting to get in that tan phase. And if I let it sit there long enough, it will turn black. I have had it turn black, and all I do is I pour my black off. Now, when it's brown or clearer, I will mix it in. If it's brown or darker, and I say brown because you can smell of it, and if it smells pretty strong, you might want to pour it off. If it doesn't smell very strong, you can mix it in. You can mix the black stuff in, but just beware. It's going to change your pH to where your sourdough starter is too acidic, and if it's too acidic, it's not going to make good bread. It's going to be flat, and it's not going to do good. And that's another thing I ask people whenever they call me and say that, you know, their bread looks horrible, and I know that they've had a starter for a while. That's one of my questions I ask is, you know, did you have Hooch? Did you stir it in? What does it smell like? Because you can change the acidity level in your pH to where it's not going to work as well. If our bodies get too acidic, we can start getting like UTIs and kidney infections and stuff like that. And we don't work as well because we're sick. Basically, kind of the same thing happens to your sourdough starter, to where it's too acidic and it's starting to get sick. Not in bad terms, but as in it doesn't feel good. It's sluggish and it's not going to work as well. Just kind of like the way we feel. And the way to fix that, I'm going to throw that in here real quick. The way to fix that, if your sourdough starter gets kind of old, gets a real strong smell, and it's not working as well, just take a tablespoon of your sourdough starter out, put it in a new jar, and give it like a 1/4 cup of feeding. And you can do like a 1/4 cup and a scant shy of water, 1/4 cup water, just to kind of give it a fresh feeding. Because if you keep taking this out, feeding it over and over and over, it never really freshens it up. And you can start throwing that pH balance off, and that's when you start getting that real sour smell. And it will make your bread really sour too. And a lot of people, especially down here in the South, we don't like the really strong sour. Now, my California friends do, my Florida friends do. They like it really, really sour. And so I know how to change that to accommodate their taste. But just for a standard sourdough, not strong sourdough bread, you want a fresh starter.